The glass facade of Columbia Memorial Medical Center reflected the late afternoon Manhattan sky, like a mirror that refused to blink. Steel, order, money control, everything Ethan Caldwell understood about the world lived comfortably in buildings like this. Hospitals, to him, were systems, departments, timelines, problems that responded to decisive action and premium insurance. He stepped through the revolving doors without looking up, already mid-thought, already elsewhere. His phone vibrated in his hand. Another message from his chief of staff. Another scheduling conflict. Another reminder that the quarterly earnings call had been moved up 48 hours. He adjusted his grip on the device, thumb hovering, calculating responses the way he always did, quietly, efficiently, without emotion. Beside him, Lila Monroe slowed her steps, her heels clicking too sharply against the polished floor. She was younger than the building, younger than most of the nurses passing by, younger than the reputation that preceded him everywhere he went. Her reflection flashed across the glass walls. Sleek coat, carefully chosen handbag, posture rehearsed in front of mirrors and social media lenses. She had perfected the art of appearing fragile, while expecting to be prioritized. "Ethan," she said, not softly, "I don't like hospitals." He nodded without turning his head. "Nobody does." "I mean it," she pressed, fingers tightening around her purse strap. "I've been nauseous all day, dizzy, and now this place smells like antiseptic and anxiety. You promised you'd stay with me." He finally looked at her then, briefly, the way one looks at a presentation slide they've already reviewed. "I'm here." "Physically," she replied, "not mentally." He didn't argue. Arguments wasted time. He simply resumed walking, steering them toward the private executive waiting area, a courtesy extended to donors, board members, men whose last names appeared on plaques. To Lila, this felt reassuring. To Ethan, it was background noise. They reached the seating area just as the automatic doors at the far end of the lobby burst open. The sound cut through the space first, the sharp clatter of wheels moving too fast, the clipped urgency of trained voices abandoning pleasantries. Clear the way now. Vitals dropping. Prep L&D for. Peripartum cardiomyopathy, possible decomp. Ethan's stride slowed, not because he understood the words, but because of the tone. Controlled panic. The kind professionals use when they know seconds matter, but refuse to show fear. A gurney rushed past the glass partition. For half a second, it was just motion, white sheets, 4 poles, a glimpse of dark hair plastered to a pale forehead. Then his world stopped. The woman on the gurney wasn't anonymous. It was Clare Caldwell, his wife. No, his ex-wife. The distinction flickered through his mind like a legal footnote, useless and absurd against the sight of her body curled inward, one hand gripping the rail, the other instinctively cradling a stomach so unmistakably pregnant it looked painful. The sterile air seemed to collapse around him. His phone slipped from his fingers. It hit the carpet without a sound. "Ethan?" Lila's voice cut in, sharp with irritation. "What's wrong with you?" He didn't answer. He couldn't move. Claire's face, ashen, drawn, unrecognizable from the woman who used to host charity dinners in their Upper East Side apartment, twisted as another contraction tore through her. Sweat darkened the collar of the hospital gown. Her lips parted, as if she were trying not to scream. Pregnant. The word detonated silently in his head. Pregnant. The gurney vanished through double doors marked authorized personnel only, the swing of them sealing the moment like a verdict. Ethan stood frozen. 8 months. The divorce had been finalized 8 months ago. His mind, trained for numbers and contracts, betrayed him now by doing what it always did, calculating. 8 months since the signatures. But not 8 months since the last night. The memory surfaced uninvited. Whiskey, Silence. A city humming outside windows that had once felt like a shared future. One last attempt at closeness before he moved into the penthouse overlooking Central Park. He had told himself it was closure. It wasn't. Ethan. Lila touched his arm now, her nails pressing just hard enough to register. You're scaring me. He inhaled sharply. I thought I saw someone, he said finally. The words felt heavy, wrong. Someone I knew. Lila frowned, already annoyed. Well, whoever was, they're not us. My appointment is in 5 minutes. He looked at her then. Really looked. Lila Monroe, curated ambition, perfect posture, problems that could be solved with reassurance and validation. She had never known him before success, never watched him build anything from nothing. She admired what he was, not what had survived. Claire had known everything. That realization hit harder than the shock. I can't go in, he said. Lila blinked. What? I can't, he repeated, stepping back as if the examination rooms were suddenly dangerous. You should go ahead. You're joking. Her voice dropped. You promised. He didn't answer. The silence was enough. Lila's expression hardened, suspicion sharpening her features. Who was that woman? Nobody, he lied automatically. The lie tasted stale. She studied him for a long moment, then scoffed. Fine, I'll go alone, but don't expect me to wait around forever. She turned and walked away, heels echoing down the corridor like a countdown. Ethan didn't watch her leave. His feet were already moving in the opposite direction, toward the maternity wing. Each step felt wrong, unauthorized, like trespass on a life he had voluntarily exited. The hallway lighting softened as he approached labor and delivery. The air changed. Quieter, heavier. The sound of fetal heart monitors pulsed faintly behind closed doors. This was not his world. A nurse at the central station looked up as he approached, eyes assessing neutral. I'm looking for a patient, he said. His voice didn't sound like his own. Claire Caldwell. The nurse typed quickly, then paused. I don't see a patient by that name. She was just brought in, he insisted. Emergency. They said. He stopped himself, realizing how little he knew. They said her heart something. The nurse's gaze sharpened, professional boundaries snapping into place. Sir, even if she were here, I couldn't confirm that information unless you're listed as next of kin. I'm her husband. The lie came easily. The nurse didn't flinch. Are you legally married? He hesitated. That was enough. I'm sorry, she said, already turning back to her screen. You'll need to wait in the family lounge. He stood there for a moment longer, then nodded and retreated. The lounge was small, beige, designed to drain urgency out of people who had no control. A muted television played a daytime talk, showing no one was watching. Ethan sat and waited. The waiting was worse than anything else. Time stretched. Minutes turned elastic. His thoughts circled the same realization over and over, each pass cutting deeper. He hadn't just left Clare. He had abandoned her. The narrative he had sold, to friends, to colleagues, to himself, had been clean. Mutual drift, different priorities, a marriage that no longer aligned with the trajectory of his life. But trajectories didn't explain this. Pregnant, alone, fighting. His phone buzzed again. This time it was his attorney. He didn't answer. Somewhere beyond the walls, a woman he once loved was battling something he hadn't even known existed. And for the first time in years, Ethan Caldwell felt something dangerously unfamiliar. Powerless. Ethan Caldwell remained seated long after the lounge had emptied of anything resembling normalcy. The father with the coffee was gone. The teenage boy had been led down a hallway by a nurse, shoulders slumped, phone forgotten in his pocket. Even the television had been muted. The host's mouth moving silently as if the hospital itself had decided noise was unnecessary. Only Ethan stayed. He sat with his spine straight, shoulders squared, hands resting flat against his knees. Not in prayer, not in panic, but in a posture that suggested he was waiting for a verdict. The kind of posture men adopt when they believe endurance alone counts as accountability. The truth was, he didn't know what else to do. For most of his adult life, problems had moved toward him like obstacles on a track. You saw them early. You adjusted your stride. You cleared them. Even his divorce had felt like that. Unpleasant public, but navigable. Lawyers. Agreements. Statements. Clean separation. He had told himself the pain would dissipate the way market volatility always did. But nothing in his experience had prepared him for the sound of closed doors down a hospital corridor. They didn't slam. They didn't announce anything. They simply existed, white, sterile, unmoving, holding inside him a reality he could not enter. His phone vibrated again. He ignored it. Somewhere down the hall, a nurse laughed softly at something a colleague said. The sound felt wrong, almost offensive. Life continuing without regard for gravity pressing against Ethan's chest. He stood and paced the length of the lounge, then stopped near the window that looked out over the city. Manhattan stretched endlessly below, a grid of ambition and indifference. He had once loved this view. It had made him feel untouchable. Now it looked like a map of places he might never belong to again. The elevator chimed softly behind him. He turned as Marlene Harper stepped back onto the floor. She walked slower this time. Her coat was draped over one arm now, her posture slightly less rigid, as if something inside her had loosened, not relief, but fatigue, the kind that comes after holding a line for too long. Ethan straightened instinctively. "How is she?" Marlene didn't answer immediately. She crossed the lounge and sat down, setting her purse carefully at her feet. Only then did she look up at him. "She's still fighting," she said, which is exactly like her. Ethan nodded once. "Can I see her?" No. The word wasn't sharp. It didn't need to be. Ethan exhaled slowly. "Did she say anything about me?" Marlene studied him, her eyes assessing not his face, but his posture, his restraint, the way he didn't demand anything. "She didn't ask about you," she said, which should tell you everything. That landed harder than any accusation. Ethan leaned back against the arm of a chair, jaw tight. "I didn't know," he said again, not defensively this time, but like a man repeating a fact he wished could still absolve him. Marlene's voice stayed level. "Ignorance doesn't erase absence." Ethan looked at the floor. Marlene continued, not cruel, just precise. "Clare learned early in the marriage that if she didn't ask for much, she wouldn't be disappointed. She stopped expecting you to notice things." Ethan swallowed. "I notice." Marlene met his gaze. "You noticed outcomes, not effort." The words settled between them, heavy and undeniable. Ethan shifted. "Is the baby?" "Still strong," Marlene said. "Stubborn, just like her mother." Ethan nodded, relief flickering briefly before being swallowed by everything else. Marlene leaned forward slightly. "You need to understand something, Ethan. This isn't about whether you're sorry." Ethan didn't respond. "This is about timing," she continued. "You didn't leave Clare at her worst moment. You left her right before it." Ethan's throat tightened. "I didn't know she was sick." Marlene's eyes didn't soften. "You didn't know because you didn't ask. You didn't ask because you didn't want answers that complicated your life." Silence stretched. Then Ethan said quietly, "I want to help." Marlene's mouth curved into something that wasn't a smile. "You already did," she said. "You helped by leaving when she realized you wouldn't stay for the hard part." Ethan closed his eyes briefly. The words felt final, like a door locking behind him. A nurse appeared at the edge of the lounge, scanning the room. "Ms. Harper?" Marlene stood. "Yes." The nurse lowered her voice. "Dr. Patel would like to speak with you again." Marlene nodded once and turned to Ethan. "Wait." "I've been waiting," Ethan replied. Marlene didn't acknowledge it. She followed the nurse down the hall. Ethan sat again. Minutes passed. Then more. He noticed small details he would have ignored before. The scuff on the floor near the vending machine, the way the lights hummed faintly, the faint smell of disinfectant clinging to everything. Hospitals were designed to feel neutral. It made pain easy to manage for everyone except the people waiting. His phone vibrated again. This time he picked it up. A text from his attorney. "We need to discuss potential exposure. Call me when you can." Another from his CFO. "Board is asking questions." Media chatter increasing. And then one from an unknown number. "You don't get to show up now." Ethan stared at the message. He didn't need to ask who it was from. His fingers hovered over the screen. He could type 1,000 things. Apologies. Explanations. Promises. He typed nothing. He locked the phone and set it aside. Because for once, responding immediately felt like the wrong move. The doors opened again. Marlene returned, slower still. Ethan stood. What do they say? Marlene looked tired now. They're keeping her sedated. Her heart is under strain. They're buying time. How much time? Marlene shook her head. No one knows. Ethan nodded. Can I stay? Marlene studied him. You're not leaving, are you? No. She sighed quietly. Then sit, and don't interfere. Ethan sat. Hours passed. The city outside darkened, lights flickering on one by one. Night settled over the hospital, like a hell breath. A nurse brought Marlene a cup of water. Someone offered Ethan coffee. He declined. At some point, exhaustion replaced anxiety. The sharp edge of fear dulled into something heavier, slower. That was when the memories surfaced. Not the last argument. Not the divorce. Earlier, Clare standing in their kitchen, rubbing her temples while he talked about a merger. She had asked him to slow down just for a minute. He had waved her off, saying he was almost done. She had nodded and sat down quietly, like she didn't want to interrupt something important. He had finished the call and looked up, expecting gratitude for his attention. Instead, she had been asleep at the table. He had felt annoyed then, not concerned. Annoyed. The memory made his stomach twist. Another nurse passed by, glancing at him with professional neutrality. Ethan wondered how many people here had seen him arrive with Lila. How many had already formed opinions? For the first time, he didn't care. He wasn't here to be forgiven. He was here because leaving felt impossible. The doors opened again. Dr. Patel stepped into the lounge, his expression serious but controlled. Marlene stood immediately. Ethan followed. Ms. Harper, Dr. Patel said. Mr. Caldwell. Ethan stiffened at the acknowledgement. We're proceeding with closer monitoring, Dr. Patel continued. Her heart rate is unstable. We're trying to avoid emergency delivery, but we're preparing for that possibility. Ethan's chest tightened. Is she conscious? She drifts in and out, Dr. Patel said. She's been asking for her mother. Marlene nodded. Steady. I'm here. Dr. Patel turned to Ethan. Mr. Caldwell, I need be clear with you. Ethan met his gaze. If we need to make rapid decisions, the doctor continued, you will not be the one making them. That authority rests with Ms. Harper. I understand, Ethan said quietly. Dr. Patel studied him for a moment longer, then nodded. Good. He turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. She asked that you not be told certain details. Ethan's jaw tightened. Such as? Dr. Patel's voice remained calm, such as how long she's been experiencing symptoms. Ethan's breath caught. How long? He asked. Dr. Patel hesitated. Several months. Ethan closed his eyes. Several months. The doctor left. Marlene didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Ethan sank back into the chair. Several months of symptoms. Several months of pregnancy. Several months of silence. It all added up to the same conclusion. Claire hadn't hidden this out of spite. She had hidden it because she had already accepted she was alone. The realization didn't explode inside him. It settled. And in that settling, something in Ethan shifted. Not redemption. Not resolve. Just understanding. He would not be the hero of this story. He would be the consequence. The third night shift began the way Ethan didn't realize night shifts began. Not with announcements, not with chaos, but with subtle change in the air. The hallway outside labor and delivery grew quieter, the footsteps softer, the voices lower. Even the fluorescent lights seemed dimmer, as if the building itself respected the weight that settled on people after midnight. Ethan had stopped checking the clock. Time was no longer a number. It was a pressure. Marlene sat with her arms folded across her chest, staring at the corridor like a guard assigned to a door. She refused to let anyone enter. She hadn't slept. Ethan hadn't either. Both of them existed now in the same suspended state. Awake, functioning, empty of everything except waiting. A nurse came through with a clipboard, paused at the lounge, and offered Marlene a blanket. Marlene shook her head. The nurse glanced at Ethan, offered him one too. Ethan refused as well. They weren't cold. They were bracing. Ethan's phone remained face down on the chair beside him. The only reason he hadn't turned it off was because part of him feared the moment it stopped buzzing would be the moment the hospital called his name for the wrong reason. The device felt less like a tool and more like a tether. If it vibrated, it meant the world still existed. If it didn't, it meant something had shifted beyond his control. Across the lounge, a vending machine clicked and whirred as if it was alive. The sound was steady, mindless, cruel. Ethan cleared his throat. Marlene. She didn't look at him. Can I ask you something? He continued. Marlene's eyes remained on the hallway. You're going to anyway. Ethan swallowed. Did she ever talk about me? After the divorce. Marlene let the question hang, not to punish him theatrically, but because she was deciding whether he deserved the answer. She didn't talk about you the way you think, Marlene said finally. Ethan's jaw tightened. What does that mean? Marlene turned her head slightly, eyes narrowing. It means she didn't rant. She didn't cry to me every night. She didn't call you names. Claire doesn't perform pain. Ethan didn't respond. She did something worse, Marlene added. Ethan's throat tightened. Worse. She went quiet. Marlene said, not dramatic quiet, practical quiet, like a woman reorganizing her life, the way you reorganize a company after a scandal. She started cutting things out. Items, habits, people, expectations. Ethan's hands clenched. She should have called me. Marlene's gaze slid to him, sharp. Called you for what? Comfort? You weren't comforting. Called you for help? You made her feel ashamed for needing help. Ethan flinched. Marlene continued, voice calm, not raised. The night she moved out of the penthouse, she didn't ask for anything. She didn't take the art. She didn't take the jewelry. She didn't take half the furniture. She took her clothes and a box of photographs and one small folder. Ethan frowned. A folder? Marlene nodded. Brown. Plain. Like the kind you'd ignore. Ethan's stomach tightened, his mind reaching for the image without finding it. What was in it? Marlene looked away again. Documents. What kind of documents? Ethan pressed. Marlene's voice stayed flat. The kind that proved she understood you better than you understood yourself. Ethan's breath caught. Marlene. She finally looked at him fully. You want details because details make you feel like you can solve something. But this isn't a puzzle. It's a consequence. Ethan's jaw tightened. I'm not trying to solve it. I'm trying to understand. Marlene held his gaze for a long moment, then said, Fine. Here's something you can understand. Claire didn't trust your remorse. She trusted your patterns. Ethan felt the sentence hit him and stay there. Before he could respond, the corridor doors opened. A nurse stepped out briskly. Nurse Alvarez. Her posture was straight, her expression controlled. But her eyes looked sharper than before, like someone who had just watched the situation narrow. "M.S. Harper," she said. "Dr. Patel needs you." Marlene stood immediately. Ethan rose with her, but Nurse Alvarez raised a hand slightly. Not rude, just firm. "Not you, sir." Ethan nodded once. "Is she—" Dr. Patel will explain. Nurse Alvarez said, "Please wait here." Marlene followed her without hesitation, not looking back. Ethan sat again. The chair creaked under him. And he hated that sound because it reminded him his body still existed while Claire's was being monitored by machines. He stared at the doors. A minute passed. 2. 5. He tried not to imagine what "needs you" meant. He tried not to imagine paperwork. Emergency consent. Worst-case conversations held in small rooms. His phone buzzed. He didn't look. It buzzed again. He still didn't look. Then it buzzed a third time, and something in him snapped, not anger, but the fragile edge of being pulled in too many directions. He flipped it over. A known number. He stared at it for a moment, then answered. "This is Ethan." A woman's voice came through, quiet, clipped, professional. "Mr. Caldwell, this is Dana Pierce from Harborline Capital." Ethan's chest tightened. Harborline wasn't just a fund. It was the one that had backed his expansion into healthcare tech. The one that had introduced him to donors, board members, senators. "Dana," Ethan said carefully, "now isn't a good time." "That's exactly why it is," Dana replied. "You're trending." Ethan's grip tightened. "I don't care." A pause on the line, then, "You should." He closed his eyes. "What's being said?" Dana's voice lowered, as if she were speaking from a room where other people might overhear. "That you arrived at Columbia Memorial with your mistress. That your pregnant wife is inside. That hospital staff saw a scene. That there was shouting." Ethan's jaw tightened. "There wasn't shouting." Dana didn't argue. Truth doesn't matter as much as momentum. There's already a thread connecting your foundation donations to this hospital. People are framing it as performative. Ethan's stomach turned. Performative. "Yes," Dana said. "They're asking why your wife was worried about medical bills if you're a platinum benefactor." Ethan went still. "That's not possible," he said. Dana didn't soften. "It's being asked, Ethan, and questions are contagious." Ethan stared at the wall. "What do you want?" Dana paused. "I want to know if you're about to become a reputational fire. Harborline doesn't fund fires." Ethan's voice dropped. "I'm not a fire." Dana's tone stayed calm. "Then don't act like one. Silence reads like guilt. A statement reads like spin. Either way, your next move will be interpreted." Ethan swallowed. "My next move is to stay here." Dana sighed, almost imperceptible. "Then I'll be blunt. If your wife survives and the public believe you abandoned her, they will enjoy your downfall. Investors don't like being entertainment." Ethan's grip tightened until his knuckles hurt. "If she survives?" Dana didn't answer directly. She didn't have to. Ethan's voice went quiet. "I need to go." Dana paused. "Ethan." "What?" Dana's voice softened by a fraction, not sympathy, more like strategy. "This is bigger than your marriage. This is about your identity." If you handle this wrong, you won't just lose a woman. You'll lose the story you sell the world." Ethan ended the call without responding. His hand stayed on the phone for a moment longer. Then he set it down again, face down like it was a stain. He realized something ugly and undeniable. The world was watching, even here, even now. And that meant Clare was not only fighting for her life. She was fighting inside a narrative he had already poisoned. The doors opened again. Marlene returned, and Ethan stood before she fully entered the lounge. Her face was composed, but the lines around her mouth had tightened. The folder in her hand was back, the same plain brown folder she had carried earlier. Seeing it now made Ethan's chest tighten. "What's happening?" Ethan asked. Marlene didn't sit. She looked at him as if she was deciding whether to allow him into a room, without opening any doors. "Her oxygen keeps dropping," Marlene said. "They're preparing in case they have to deliver." Ethan swallowed. "Deliver tonight?" Marlene nodded once. Ethan's chest tightened painfully. "Can I see her?" Marlene's eyes narrowed. "No." He stepped closer, voice low. "Marlene, please." Marlene stared at him. "You keep asking like repetition will change reality." Ethan's jaw flexed. "I need to tell her." "What?" Marlene cut in calmly. "That you're sorry. That you didn't know. That you're here now." Ethan didn't answer. Marlene's voice dropped. "Clare doesn't want words. She wants proof that you understand consequence." Ethan's throat tightened. "How do I prove that if I can't even see her?" Marlene held his gaze. "By not making this about you." The sentence didn't sound like moral advice. It sounded like a rule. Marlene lifted the brown folder slightly. "Dr. Patel asked me to update her paperwork," she said. "In case." "In case," Ethan echoed. Marlene nodded. "If she loses consciousness, I need to be able to make decisions fast." Ethan's hands clenched. "So you have authority?" "Yes," Marlene said. Ethan swallowed. "Does she have an advance directive?" Marlene stared at him. "You don't get to speak like a lawyer now." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I'm trying to understand what's in that folder." Marlene's gaze sharpened. "You're trying to regain control." Ethan forced air into his lungs. "Fine. Then tell me what she wants." Marlene's eyes didn't soften, but her voice lowered, more personal now. "She wants the baby safe," she said, "and she wants no chaos. She doesn't want you making grand gestures. She doesn't want you buying forgiveness. She doesn't want you rewriting history." Ethan went still. "Rewrite history." Marlene nodded. She said, "If he tells people he came back because he loved me, it will be a lie." Ethan's throat tightened. "What does she think I came back for?" Marlene's voice stayed calm. "Because you saw her suffering. Because you saw the consequences in public. Because you realized your image might collapse." Ethan flinched. Marlene stepped closer, and her voice dropped into something sharper, not loud, just deadly accurate. "And the worst part is, Ethan, she isn't wrong." Ethan stared at her, and the silence between them felt like a door closing. A nurse hurried past the lounge, moving faster than before. Another followed. The corridor tightened. The air changed. Controlled urgency returned. Marlene turned slightly toward the hallway, as if listening to a language Ethan couldn't hear. Then she looked back at him. "Stay here," she said again. Ethan swallowed. "If something happens..." Marlene's gaze held his. "If something happens, you will not fix it with money or words. Do you understand that?" Ethan nodded once. "Yes." Marlene watched him for a beat longer, then walked out of the lounge, folder in hand, toward the doors. Ethan remained standing after she left. He did not sit immediately. He watched the corridor, the movement, the quick steps, the way nurses' faces stayed calm even as their pace increased. The hospital was not dramatic. It was efficient. It didn't perform fear. It managed it. Ethan realized that was what Clare had done for years. Managed fear quietly. Managed disappointment quietly. Managed betrayal quietly. So when she finally collapsed, it wasn't a scene. It was an inevitability. He sat down slowly. His phone buzzed again, but he didn't look. The lounge felt smaller now, like a room shrinking around him. The doors down the hall stayed shut. And Ethan understood with terrifying clarity that the punishment arc he had always loved watching in other people's lives had finally turned toward him, not through shouting, not through revenge, through waiting, through the kind of quiet consequence that does not end when the credits roll. And somewhere behind those doors, Clare was still fighting, whether she survived or not. The world that had protected Ethan Caldwell with money and reputation was already beginning to let him go. He could feel it, not in headlines, in the silence that no longer respected him. The hallway outside labor and delivery no longer pretended to be neutral. Ethan noticed it first in the way people stopped making eye contact. Nurses moved faster now, not running, but walking with the kind of intent that meant protocols had shifted. The quiet conversations near the station ended the moment he drew close, replaced by clipped nods and professional distance. Whatever protection anonymity once gave him inside this building was gone. He had become context. He sat where Marlene had told him to sit, because movement now felt like defiance. And defiance, he understood, would not earn him access, only removal. The chair pressed uncomfortably into his back. But he didn't adjust. He needed to feel it, needed the reminder that this was not a boardroom where discomfort could be smoothed away. Time slowed again, then fractured. A nurse stepped into the lounge, glanced at him, hesitated, then left without speaking. 5 minutes later, another passed. Eyes down. The television flickered to life briefly, some late-night commercial about sleep aids, before someone muted again. Silence reclaimed the room. Ethan's thoughts wandered where he didn't want them to go. He imagined Clare on the hospital bed, wires attached, heart monitor pulsing out a rhythm that determined everything. He imagined her trying not to panic, trying not to make noise, trying not to be a problem. That image hurt worse than imagining her screaming. Screaming would have implied release. Clare had never released anything. The doors at the end of the corridor opened again. This time, 2 doctors emerged together, walking with synchronized steps that immediately told Ethan something had changed. Dr. Patel was one of them. The other Ethan didn't recognize. A woman with tightly pulled hair and the calm, distant focus of someone trained to make decisions people resent but need. Marlene followed them, her posture rigid. Ethan stood before they reached the lounge. Dr. Patel raised a hand slightly, not to stop him, but to prepare him. "Mr. Caldwell," he said evenly. Ethan nodded. "What's happening?" Dr. Patel glanced at Marlene, then back to Ethan. "Miss Caldwell's heart function has declined further. She's not responding as well as we hoped to medication." Ethan felt his chest tighten. "What does that mean?" The female doctor spoke this time. "It means we're approaching a decision point." Ethan's jaw clenched. "What kind of decision?" Marlene answered before the doctors could. "They're talking about delivering the baby early." Ethan swallowed hard. "Tonight?" Dr. Patel nodded. "If her condition worsens, yes. We're trying to buy time, but time isn't cooperating." Ethan's breath came shallow. "And her?" "Clare." Dr. Patel didn't sugarcoat it. "Pregnancy puts strain on the heart. Delivery could stabilize her, or destabilize her further. There are risks either way." Ethan looked at Marlene. "What does she want?" Marlene's voice was steady, but the muscles in her jaw tightened. "She wants the baby safe. She wants no chaos. And she wants decisions made by people who won't hesitate." Ethan nodded once. "That's you." "Yes," Marlene said. Ethan's throat tightened. Can I see her? Just once. The second doctor, Dr. Nguyen, her badge read, met his gaze. That's not advisable. Ethan didn't argue. He didn't plead. He simply said, I understand. That response seemed to surprise them more than any outburst would have. Dr. Patel studied him for a moment, then said, We'll update you if there's a significant change. The doctors turned back toward the corridor. Marlene followed them partway, then stopped and turned back to Ethan. Sit, she said quietly. Ethan sat. The doors closed again. Something shifted inside him then, not panic, not fear, but resignation. The kind that arrives when a man realizes he has done all the negotiating he is allowed to do. His phone buzzed. He looked at it this time. A news alert. Tech billionaire Ethan Caldwell spotted at hospital amid rumors of marital scandal. He stared at the headline without opening it. He didn't need to read the article to know what it said. He could already hear the tone. Curiosity dressed up as concern. Speculation framed as accountability. He could imagine the comments underneath. People filling in gaps with their own satisfaction. He locked the phone and set aside. For the first time, the idea of losing his reputation felt small. What terrified him wasn't the loss of admiration. It was the possibility that Clare might not live long enough to know he finally understood what he had done. The thought hit him so suddenly that he had to grip the armrest to stay grounded. Across the lounge, a man in scrubs sat with his head in his hands, rocking slightly. Ethan had seen him earlier. Someone else's husband, someone else's nightmare. Their eyes met briefly, then looked away. Two men connected only by the fact that neither could help the person they loved. The realization made Ethan feel less alone and more exposed at the same time. Minutes passed, then more. The doors opened again. A nurse stepped out, moving quickly, scanning the lounge. When her eyes landed on Ethan, she approached. Mr. Caldwell, she said. Miss Harper asked me to get you. Ethan stood immediately. What happened? The nurse didn't answer directly. Please come with me. Marlene stood just beyond the threshold of the corridor, her face unreadable. Ethan followed. They walked past rooms, past equipment, past staff who didn't slow for him. The nurse stopped outside a small consultation room and gestured him inside. Marlene closed the door behind them. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Marlene said, They're taking her into surgery. Ethan's breath caught. For delivery? Yes, Marlene said. Her oxygen dropped again. They can't wait. Ethan swallowed. Is she conscious? She was, Marlene said, before they sedated her. Ethan's voice shook despite his effort. Did she say anything? Marlene hesitated. Ethan held his breath. She asked if the baby was okay. Marlene said, She didn't ask about you. Ethan nodded, pain settling deep and quiet. Marlene continued, but when the anesthesiologist explained the risks, she said something. Ethan looked up. She said, If something happens to me, don't let him rewrite this. Ethan's chest tightened. Rewrite what? Marlene's gaze sharpened. The story. Silence filled the room. Ethan understood exactly what Clare meant. He had always been good at reframing, at adjusting narratives until they fit the image he wanted to project. He had convinced investors, boards, journalists, and himself that leaving Clare was a strategic decision, not a moral failure. Clare was asking for one thing now. Truth. Unedited. Unpolished. Ethan nodded slowly. I won't. Marlene studied him. That's easy to say. I know, Ethan replied quietly. I'll prove it by doing nothing. That seemed to surprise her. Nothing, she repeated. Yes, Ethan said. No statements. No interviews. No charity gestures with my name attached. No explanations. Marlene searched his face. looking for performance. She didn't find it. The door opened, and Dr. Patel stepped in. "They're beginning," he said. "It will take some time." Ethan nodded. "Can I wait here?" Dr. Patel glanced at Marlene, then back to Ethan. "Yes." The doctor left. The room felt smaller than the lounge. No television. No windows. Just a table and 4 chairs. Ethan sat. Marlene remained standing. Minutes stretched into something heavier. At one point, Ethan realized his hands were shaking. He folded them together, forcing stillness. He thought about the first time he had met Clare, a fundraiser. She'd been quiet, observant, unimpressed by noise. He had mistaken that for admiration. He thought about the first time she had stopped correcting him, how he'd taken it as agreement instead of withdrawal. He thought about the way she had said, "You'll learn, but too late." The door opened again. Dr. Patel stepped in, face composed but serious. Marlene straightened. Ethan stood. "The baby is out," Dr. Patel said. Ethan's breath rushed out of him. "Alive?" "Yes," the doctor said. "Premature but strong. Neonatal is taking over." Ethan's knees almost gave. He steadied himself on the back of a chair. "And Clare?" Dr. Patel paused. The pause felt endless. "She's stable," he said carefully, "but critical." Ethan nodded, heart pounding. "Can I see the baby?" Dr. Patel shook his head. "Not yet. Ms. Harper will go first." Marlene nodded, then looked at Ethan. "You'll stay." "Yes," Ethan said. Marlene followed Dr. Patel out. Ethan remained alone in the room. He sat slowly, the adrenaline draining out of him, replaced by something heavier. The baby was alive. Clare was alive. But nothing was resolved. This wasn't the ending. It was a midpoint, the place where punishment deepened, not lifted. Ethan leaned forward, elbows on knees, staring at the blank wall. He didn't pray. He didn't bargain. He waited. And for the first time in his life, waiting felt exactly like what he deserved. If you enjoy the story and are interested in the next part of this story, let us know in the comments, and we will make it available on the channel. But make sure you are subscribed to the channel so you can get notified